It was scary for sure because I was alone for a lot of it. Nobody thinks cancer, even if you're a mild hypochondriac like myself. I'm in my 20s. You're telling me now that I have a life expectancy of 3 to 4 years? That's not something you want to hear. I was leaning on my left side and I felt a pinch in my armpit. And I was like, oh, I felt a swollen lymph node. I've had swollen lymph nodes like throughout my life, on and off. So that's initially what I thought. I was like, okay, I'll just keep an eye on it. A couple weeks, honestly, maybe like even a month goes by and I'm like continuously checking in on it. And I noticed a few more. So that set off some red flags in my head. And I went to quite a few walk-in clinics and I had essentially just been like brushed off from a few doctors. I felt like all the doctors looked at me like I was being a hypochondriac and that I was too young for anything like serious. To be turned away that many times is so defeating in a sense. And like, I just advocated for myself. I kept going. I was just like, there is something wrong. Grateful for that one last doctor that felt them. And he was like, oh, interesting. And it's been this long. And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like really sick of constantly going in to see these other doctors that just don't listen to me. Like, I know this needs to be looked at. So I got my ultrasound around the end of the year in December. Early January, I got a call from that doctor and he just said, he was like, they want to send you in for biopsy. I was by myself because I didn't think anything of it. You think of anything else, but like truly the last thing you truly think is cancer. The doctor took the biopsy, the sample, and walked like 4 steps to his little like microscope or whatever the heck it's called, and turned around and was like, Rebecca, I'm sorry, it's cancer. I looked at him and I was like, what do you mean it's cancer? I'm like, I'm in my 20s. It was such a weird, surreal feeling because like nothing really lands when you get that information, and your body and your brain are just like battling each other for like what is real and what's not, and you're trying to like find ways to cope, but it's just a lot. I had like 4 or 5 scans all in a row, so basically that like week moving forward I was just in scans after scans after scans. And I had never, like prior to that, I had never even broken a bone. I never spent so much time in a hospital. And it was weird because I would go into these rooms like waiting for these scans, and like it was all through the cancer center there, and I was the youngest person in the room and it felt really isolating. I felt so alone and I was in like full shutdown mode at that point. Like there was no information somebody could give me that I would retain. Like it was just in an ear, out another. Like I was like a shell of a human, truly. Like I told her, I was like, I don't know anything. I was like, it's been weeks of just scans. All I have is I have breast cancer. It's really bad because I'm gonna only live a few years. And she looks at me and she was like, you're in your 20s. I'm like, I'm aware of my age. And she was just like, I'm not signing your death certificate. She was like, we're throwing the entire kitchen, the kitchen sink at it. She was like, I'm not scared of like what's going to happen next. She's like, you're going to be fine. And I think that was the first time that I actually felt like a mild sense of peace. She was like so confident in everything she was like telling me that I felt mildly okay. And I like kind of came back into the room a little bit. I had the HER2-positive breast cancer, so, and hormone negative, and yeah, like the inflammatory kind, I guess. And I met with my oncologist and I was like officially staged at stage 3C. So the cancer had spread all the way up to my collarbone in the lymph nodes, and there was no detection of it anywhere else. Started chemo 2 days before Canada officially went into COVID lockdown. So I had friends and I had my boyfriend at the time there with me, but because of COVID, and as you know, chemotherapy really messes with your immune system. Like I was like absolutely terrified to be anywhere, and the chemo effects started coming up. My hair was quite long. It was like by my hips. And then when I knew I was going to get chemotherapy, I went and cut my hair like super short, like collarbone length, because I was just like, I felt like in my head, I'm like, it would be less traumatic for my hair to fall out shorter than it would be for like 22 inches long. So I got a bob. I got a bob cut by this like lovely lady who her mom had also had breast cancer. So as an indigenous woman, like our hair is really important as an extension of our spirit. So losing my hair was honestly horrible. That morning, I think it was like not even a week after my first infusion, I woke up and like my scalp hurt. And I went and like I put my hair in a little like scrunchie to wash my face. And when I pulled the scrunchie out, like a massive clump of hair came with the scrunchie. And I just was like, oh, okay, it's happening. And then I looked at my scalp and like my entire scalp was just covered in like red bumps. and it was just like so inflamed. Chemo strips literally everything from you. And it's so hard to lose like all the control. Like you don't have any control. You're just there and hoping that it does what it needs to do. And it takes literally the life from you. But I'm glad I made the decision to shave my head when I did, because like I said, it was definitely a moment of like, okay, like at least this I can control. I'm taking a little bit of my power back. And it was a decision that I was making, not like the chemo. The following treatment, I had to go in with like a full mask. My hair had already fallen out at that time. And I walked in and like the hospital was like scary. There was nobody. Everybody that was there for treatment was just themselves. Like I couldn't bring anybody. I think you have a lot of time to like sit in your own thoughts. Yeah, I found ways. Like I listened to music, I listened to podcasts, because I think my chemo infusions were like 3-4 hours or something like that. It was a long time. I think throughout a lot of my chemo infusions and just like the whole process of chemo, I had 6 like infusions. It was scary for sure because I was alone for a lot of it. A lot of my side effects, like they were quite consistent, but at the beginning of the chemo, like I didn't know what to expect. I had like a list of potential side effects, but like obviously it's dependent on the person. And I had nobody in my life that had known, like that even knew what this felt like. I didn't know anybody that had like a young cancer diagnosis. Honestly, I am so grateful for social media. And I had decided, when I think it was like a month after I was diagnosed, I decided to share it online because I was just like, there has to be other people out there. I had found women like all over Canada that were literally diagnosed with either like the same staging or a similar kind of breast cancer. But that online community really changed like my outlook on my treatment. And yeah, just I think like overall knowing that I'm not alone. I'm going into my 6th year of remission, and like I'm still dealing with a lot of really deep fear of it coming back. Like any headache that may last too long, or any like bone pain or any kind of like discomfort. My anxiety is just constant. And like having cancer and going through something like that is trauma. And like you're dealing with that aftermath. And I don't think you really realize until you're on that other side. Every single year since my official being in remission, I've had some sort of scare since every single year. And I'm actually dealing with that right now. So last summer I had a scare because I found a swollen lymph node in my armpit, and I spiraled because that's exactly how I found my original cancer. So after further investigation, they were like, you're good. And I'm like, perfect. I just recently got my scan this year and they found something suspicious. So now I have to go, I'm waiting for an ultrasound. So it is truly never ending. I did not allow myself to grieve my diagnosis and my treatment, and just like those 11 months of me going through like some of the worst times in my life. Like I didn't allow space for that. I didn't even allow myself to cry. Allow yourself to cry, allow yourself to grieve, allow yourself to be happy, angry, feel all of the things, because when it's time to fight, that'll happen. But at the beginning and all the in-betweens, like allow yourself to feel all of the things. After my cancer, I went straight into a frontline hospital role. So for 2 years following, I was working frontline with individuals like coming in and out from rural and remote communities and urban indigenous populations in a hospital. And I felt really empowered, and I felt that like sense of passion again, because I was able to, advocate for those people that just like felt like they didn't have a voice. I would talk to all of these young or old or whatever stage in your life was at, like indigenous people that were getting the news of their diagnosis and like whatever stage in their treatment that they were at, to have somebody there that, cancer looks different for every single person, but a lot of the processes and stages going through the hospital system are pretty similar. And to be able to share my story and for them to see me on the other side is really important.
Thank you so much for watching. If you were inspired by this story, we've queued up another one for you here. And please make sure you subscribe to the Patient Story community, where we're humanizing cancer one story at a time and always reminding people you're never alone.